I'm not getting any audio. Is the meeting started yet?
How about now?
Can you hear us now, Bob?
Yes.
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, so quick recap. Essentially, Freedom of Information Act request, clerk's office uncovered a contract, went to legal counsel as advised by the board, and now we need to determine what the Board of Commissioners would like to see in the contract for services to be presented to the Commission on Aging for future release of the current millage. If you guys would like to think about it for the next 2 weeks and get back to me, we definitely have time to make those determinations, but I certainly would advise that keeping the appointment of a Board of Commissioner would be included on that. I would also advise that you request quarterly reports and financials to the Board of Commissioners. Anything else that you can think of that might fall in there as far as things that you need to know as a board overseeing this spending of the millage money.
Jody, have you checked with other counties yet to see what their contracts are?
I have not. I will though.
Yeah, maybe instead of reinventing the wheel here, we look at get another contract and tweak it to our needs.
With your permission, reach out to the COA.
Mark.
Well, this is the contract that we present to them.
Okay. Like this to be.
Has Mark got his microphone on?
Mark,
What do you suggest we do at this juncture? Would you like to meet with the director of COA and?
I don't think so. I think it's up to the Board of Commissioners first to determine a contract.
Okay.
They are aware. I did talk to their business director. She understands that this isn't a, gosh, the Board of Commissioners isn't going to contract with us. This is a, hey, we have to have a contract before we can go any further legally. So,
Okay.
And just for future references, anything like this, be it Commission on Aging, any other group that you have a countywide millage, that it's not a county entity, we would have to also have a contract for services for. So I can grab a couple contracts and get those over to you guys and maybe just add this on for the work session again. Is that?
Yeah.
And then we could invite the new director as well to attend so that she can listen and be on the know.
It's important for us to cut and paste off maybe someone else's program so we can have a good contract that's current. Thank you.
any other comments, Tim? I'm sorry, Tim, Dave, or Bob?
I guess I put it on for 2 weeks after we get the contracts to look at, give us a better idea what we should be looking for, what other people have been looking for.
Okay. Item number 2, Wage and Salary Committee recommendations. Jody, you're up again.
Per our compensation policy, any new or updated job descriptions are presented to the Wage and Salary Committee for review and then recommendations for placements into the wage scale grades, which you guys should have actually in your packet. It's the very last page, wage progression system. This is the January 1, 2021. So we have 3 positions in total. The first one is the Gypsy Moth Program Specialist position. So we currently have a lead Gypsy Moth that was working with us. That was intended to be the kind of assistant Gypsy Moth. As you all know, March of last year, right before quarantine, our current, at the time, director retired to freelance, and we kind of threw our lead along with our forester from MSUE under contract into into the woods, literally, to operate on the gypsy moth program. They've obviously done fabulous, but the things that we need from the current lead and that the lead is currently doing are much, much more than that. So we developed the gypsy moth program specialist position. This puts them really under the general supervision now of the Gypsy Moth Suppression Advisory Board. But they will oversee the daily operations, including the inspections and spring spray, and then all the staffing, training, and field work as well. This came back as a recommendation of a level 4. Just so you know what the Wage and Salary Committee does is the same processes that we contracted it for 2 years ago of reviewing a job and placing it within a certain number of points. That is the process that they use as well. So they essentially score it out based on the 10 categories and average out where they are. There's always a high one and there's always a low one, which I think tend to help keep things very honest. So this is actually came in at a grade 4 for this position, which would be 1777 to 2132 is what the scale is for that. The second position that they reviewed is the Roscommon County 911 Central Dispatch Quality Assurance Improvement Coordinator, which was presented by Director Stringham several meetings ago, and we were just waiting for a wage and compensation review of that position. So with this one, they went through and it scored out at a grade 5, 2038 to 2445 was that. Now, the second position, I'll have to give you a little bit more explanation for, I feel like. So this is actually currently the position in my office of Human Resource Generalist. But the job description that was submitted for the wage and salary study was the original job description from 2013, none of which registers what happens in that office. Truly, there is much more independent judgment in that office. That position has to be able to make decisions, make calls, deals with confidential information, and really needs to be able to operate independently in those areas of payroll, safety, employee relations, welfare, benefits, and compensation. So we have updated the HR generalist position and submitted that for review. And that one actually scored out at a grade 7, which is 2669 to 3203. So I have all of those in there based on their recommendations. One of the things that I will tell you, in case you don't remember the makeup of the Wage and Salary Committee, is it is all employees. There are none of us, no elected officials, nobody from my office. Noel oversees it and scores accordingly. But we have representatives from the clerk's office, the treasurer's office, sheriff's department, animal control. So it's a pretty wide range. And they're good. I mean, they're good. They're taking their job seriously. So I would be asking you guys to consider those and then place those on for approval at the next meeting.
What was the level, the current level for the Gypsy Moth lead person?
The Gypsy Moth lead is currently at 2.
2, and the quality assurance person at 911?
Brand new job.
New job.
Yep.
And the generalist human resource is at?
5.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from any of the commissioners? Okay, moving along. Item 3, jury board of canvassers appointments. Michelle.
So in April of this year, Carolyn Pychek, who served on the jury board and the board of canvassers, submitted her resignation. So that created a vacancy on each of those boards. I went through the process with jury board any jury board appointments, I have to get the recommendation from the chief judge. So the first process for any of these positions is I have to contact the two major political parties from the last election, which was Republican and Democrat chairs. So I did reach out to both of those for the jury board position. I did not receive any names back from the Democratic Party for a jury board appointment. I received two names, William Cornelia and Dr. David Hansen from the Republican Party. I did attach for you their letters that they submitted. And the recommendation from Chief Judge Noble was from William Cornelia to be appointed to the jury board to fill that vacancy. And it's a partial term. So then it expires, oh, I put the wrong date on the letter. So it actually expires 2025. Oh, you might have the right one. Maybe not. So it actually expires April 30th of 2025 because it was a 6-year appointment and they were appointed in 2019. On the Board of Canvassers, that is actually a 4-year appointment, and I only needed recommendations from the Republican Party because that was where the vacancy was created. That term, Carolyn's term, was actually set to expire this year, September 30th. So the appointment, the only name that I have is Dr. David Hansen for that position. And so it would be a partial term appointment until September 30th. And then I will be back to see you again in a few months whenever I have to submit names for appointments for full 4-year terms for one person from the Republican and one person from the Democratic Party for the Board of Canvassers. But this time, I'm presenting you their names to be voted on at the next meeting to fill these vacancies. Any questions?
Is it 2 vacancies for the Board of Canvassers?
No, this is just one right now. Carolyn resigned and her term is up September 30th. So we just need somebody to fill from now until September 30th because we do have the August election.
But it's 2 for the jury board.
There's only 1 vacancy, but there was 2 names submitted.
Okay, so you guys have to make a decision.
Judge Noble, the asterisk is next to who the judge recommended, but it ultimately is your decision. I guess you have to let me know before the next meeting so we can make that motion.
Would Dr. David Hansen, would he be eligible for both of those? But
Yes.
okay, we just make the decision, but it's the judge recommended William.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions? Okay, moving on to item number 4. Here we go. The audit.
Here we go. Okay. As usual, the audit got bigger, and this year you had a single audit because you got more than $750,000 in federal money. So the single audit is like an audit on steroids with an enhancement of auditing procedures specifically for federal money. And I suspect for the next several years, you're going to have single audits because of COVID money expected to come in over the next several years. What does that do for us? It just means that we spend more time on the audit because we do your normal audit, but then we have to take the extra steps on looking at the federal money and how you go about spending the money. It's not just auditing the fact that the money got to where it was supposed to be, it's how you did it. Doesn't seem like I should render an opinion on that, but I do. So we did meet a week ago with your finance committee. Jody and Becca, Ed was there, and went over what I'm going to talk about probably in greater detail. So I'm just going to touch on some specifics of the audit I think are pertinent. And then if you want to stop and ask me a question anytime during this, do so. So I guess to get started, table of contents, just so you know what's in here. Your audit is 107 pages long now. And so the auditor's report, which is my opinion letter, is in the first 3 pages. The MD&A, which I consider or the public, if they wanted to get a bird's eye view and perspective from management and board, that pages 4 through 15 is a great read because it's only about 11, 12 pages and it's got some graphs in there that are helpful to put things in perspective. Pages 16 through 27 are your government-wide financial statements, basically everything that's pulled together in totals. 28 through 57 are your notes to the financial statements. Then you have 58 through 72, which are your major funds, and then also schedules on retirement and OPEB. And then if you want to look at all the non-major funds, which anything that's not major or the general fund, those schedules are on 86 through 97. So like, let's say child care fund is not a major fund, so it'd be back here in the non-majors. And then the single audit is the federal compliance stuff is from pages 100 through the end of it. So just quickly, the opinion letter, you have an unmodified opinion. I'm not going to read through this. It basically states that what my responsibilities are as the auditor and what your responsibilities are as the auditee. But in essence, what it says, because I believe the numbers in here are really correct, exception. Unmodified, unqualified, clean, however way you want to put it, but that's what it in essence says. And it's a boilerplate letter. I don't make these words up, so grammar's off. It's from the AICPA small. So let's go to the general fund, which is on page 65. And I'm going to bounce you around in this audit a little bit. General fund is the fund that you spend most of your time with as a board. On page 65 is the balance sheet as of the end of the year in comparison to 2019. You can see the total assets at the end of last year was $1,626,000, $1,027,000 rounded, compared to $1,088,000 in the year before. So your total assets are about up $538,000. You can see the big difference is in the cash. Your cash at the end of the year is up is at $1,054,000 versus the $504,000 the year before. So your cash is up by $550,000 at the end. But really the difference in the assets are. Liabilities are the bills that were paid in January that were for the prior year. So that's $261,000. The difference between the assets and the liabilities is your equity on balance, which is that second number from the bottom, $1,365,000. The year before you were at $857,000. So your fund balance went up. Kind of follow it. Your cash position's up. Your liabilities stayed about the same. Drove your fund balance up. Follow that? Okay, so let's go to the next page, which is your statement of revenues and expenditures. There's some detailed schedules in the back of the audit for the general fund, but this gives you a kind of a bird's eye view of what happened during the year. First column in here is the original budget. Second column is your final amended budget, then your actual expenses and revenues, and then variances. If you look at the total revenue, which is about a third of the way down, that third column, you'll see that you took in the general fund $9,359,000. That's $760,000 or $61,000 more than what it was the year before, and you can tie that right into the third number coming down in that column, $1,000 in federal COVID money that came difference between years. So your state revenue went down $226,000, but it really didn't. What happened is some of it got recategorized as federal because it passes through the state, but because of the audit, I had to call it federal. So your total revenue went up 760,000 or 61,000, which is about 9% from the prior year. And again, it's pretty much tied to the COVID or federal money. The expenditures for the year are at $8.5 million. Didn't really go up much on the expenditure side. You're at $59,000 more than what you were the year before. You're $400,000 less than what you budgeted. So your total expenditures went up only by 0.7%. From an inflationary standpoint, good. The difference between the revenues and expenditures for the year is the next number down, which is at 827,000. So again, you're up the net from the year before. You're up about $702,000. You go to the next section, which is the transfers in and out. That's nets out between what went in and out of the general fund, and these are transfers that came into the tax payment fund and maybe some other funds. Transfers out that go to places like childcare and some of the other funds that you subsidize. So the net on that was a negative 319,974. You take that against the 827 up above, and you'll see your change in fund balance right below that is 507,970, which brought your fund balance from 857,000 up to 1,305,000. So your board set a policy for the fund balance to target to be at least 15% per year. We haven't hit that in the last several years, but this year you're at 16%. Are there. Now, the big differences between the prior year, one, got that COVID money that came in. Now, every entity I'm auditing has anomalies in their expenditures from last year because it wasn't a normal year, but everybody knows. And so some expenditures went down because of the result of that. You know, some payroll may have went down because layoffs and being picked up by unemployment. And in some cases, payroll went up because of hazard pay, COVID-related expenses. So it's kind of hard to judge, you know, did you really, on a normal year, would you hit that 8.5 billion? Would you have actually spent more or less? And but you do know that the COVID money came in and subsidized some of these expenses. We also know that, and you look into transfers in, you're up $1.4 million that was transferred in. Most of that came from the tax payment fund, and the tax payment fund transferred in $606,000 more in 2020 than it did in 2019. So really, if I was going to look at this and say, why'd your fund balance go up? For the most part, it's because the tax payment fund transported a bunch of federal money and didn't spend it, because you did spend all that money. So really, that's what got your fund balance up. And I'm going to talk about the tax payment fund in a second, but your fund balance in the general fund went up by about $500,000. Tax payment fund went down by about the same amount. So see where that went. You did make some other transfers that you don't normally make out in the general fund, because when the federal money came in, you that money in those funds and you transferred it out to them. There's Road Patrol had some money that was transferred to it, 911, and so on. Those are probably not going to occur in the subsequent years unless it's transferred because of federal money that you want into the fund. Everybody? Okay. So I'm going to bounce you back up to page 23. And on page 23, it says statement of net position for proprietary funds. Proprietary funds are enterprise funds that you have at the county, are the tax payment fund, the airport, landfill, and the commissary. And I'm going to concentrate mostly on tax payment fund, which is that first column. And you can see at the end of the year, the very bottom number, the net position, what I call equity position, tax payment fund, was about $8.9 million. I will point out the airport fund had a fund balance or a net position of $4,180,000. And a lot of that isn't because if you look, their cash position is only got $4,000 in there. It's the capital. It's because you just finished another runway project or wasn't quite done at the end of the year, but we recorded that. And so you'll see that the airport, you basically have over $4 million net assets in that's undepreciated yet of the buildings and the infrastructure. So you've got quite an investment in it. We did have a discussion regarding that when I met with your group last week. But talk about the tax payment fund. That fund was designed to handle all the delinquent taxes because when they go delinquent in February, the county purchases all the delinquencies from the townships and the county's own delinquent taxes. And then historically, you would borrow money to a bond, pay off those taxes, and then collect the delinquent taxes. And the interest and penalties from those taxes would then be used to pay the bond back plus the interest on bond. Over the years, and this started back when Dory Barber was here, you started keeping that money and not spending it, and rolling it back in, and eventually you became self-funded, and that's where you are at today. There's not a lot of counties that are self-funded. I do 2 county audits right now, yours and Oscoda, and you both are self-funded, which is, well, this day and age, that's great, and it's a conservative approach that you take that allows that to happen, because a lot of counties have depleted those funds because of budgetary needs, and as a result, they have to borrow money every year. You don't have to. Rebecca literally has the money in the bank to be able to write the checks to all the townships. And that what that does is mean you get the compounded amount of money that's earned on those penalties. So if you go to the next page, which is page 24, on that first column again, tax payment fund, you can see that about halfway down, you see operating income, $687,000. That's what that fund generated from its activities, from all operational activities. There was another $83,799 in interest revenue from bank and investment, which brought it up to a net of $770,859. So that's what it generated during the year. The transfers out, which is that next section, there was 24,000 that came in from the general fund, and then $1,387,000 that went out to the general fund. So that's where that net $1,300,000 comes from, which brought, take that consideration what you earned during the year, that created a depletion of the tax payment fund of $591,000, which brought it from $5 million down to $9 million. So you can kind of see the correlation. General fund went up, tax payment fund went down. I suspect that probably won't budget that much to go in, because this is a fund that, it's your discretion on how you spend it. You're the legislators. I this. But it's a great fund for rainy day and those projects that you want to do that you can't do right out of your normal budget. Start spending it out of normal budgetary items, you're caught in that trap. Now, there are EA 123 restrictions on some of that money that you have to use it for tax collection, and so those transfers out would. But this fund historically has been used for things like your courthouse and other projects that happen over the years. So I would just say, if you can manage to keep it for that purpose, that's great. Have a emergency type thing that you have to spend the money. Last year was definitely qualifying for that, but using it for normal operations is a trap that way that.
And I'm going to just interject and just It's been several years, but Rebecca and I did several years ago present to the Board of Commissioners a policy on usage of the tax payment fund, and essentially the treasurer makes a determination of how much money is needed to stay, and then anything above and beyond could potentially be eligible for a special project. But that leaves the safeguarding to make sure it's there for what it's intended to be, where it really should be, which is with the treasurer's office. So.
At some point, are we gonna talk about what Rebecca brought up about the pending, is it a court case for the reimbursement for properties? But it could potentially cause a big hit to this bottom
If you
line.
read through the actual management and discussion letter, I mentioned that in looking at next year's problems, issues, and things we may be facing.
So there is a potential there. I don't mention that in your audit because sent the letters out to the attorneys, it's not determined yet. And unless it was known to be a case that you are definitely going to have to cost money out on, take that sort of often. But there's a looming issue out there. And that may affect also the prospective revenues as well. Something goes into place where you're unable to keep some of that money from a tax sale. But that's yet to be determined. That is a good point. Any other questions on the sanitary fund? All right, I'm going to bounce you back, page 58. This is the topic that we spent a lot of time on last week talking. I just presented Oscoda County's audit yesterday morning, and this seemed to be the hot topic there as well. On page 58 is your MERS retirement system schedule of changes in pension life. And what this is got 6 years going back history where you're at with that pension fund. Now, just a quick reminder, you have a defined benefit plan versus a defined contribution. Defined contribution would be like a 401k where the employer just matches and puts so much in. Once that money's put in, the liability to the employer is fulfilled because I just said I'd pay 6%. I did. Defined benefit plan is making a promise to pay based on a formula that was established through the plan, which is what we got here. And you've actually got multiple plans. Umbrella. So each year, the MERS has an actuary calculate what your liability is to that plan, what it would take to fully fund it as of today, and then compare that to what you think. Now, when I did your audit, the 2020 MERS report had not been released yet, so I used the 19 numbers to roll forward. So I'm slightly off from the MERS report that you just. But the amount of money that was in there on December were right the same because I didn't know that. So looking at that first column, you can see the total pension liability is $30,790,000. That's what it would take to say what you should have in that account at the end of the year to fully fund the plan. Your total amount in the plan at the end of the year is $23,900,000 rounded. Difference is just under $7 million. It's $6,394,000. So according to my calculation, you're 78% funded. Your MERS report that just came out actually shows you at 70% funded. That's partly because they made some assumption changes in the 2020 report. I wouldn't have known yet. So Because the 23 million, we'd be exactly the same. So what does that mean? It means that you're looking at the trend, you're actually funding is better than it was because you were at 70% in 2014, jumped up to 75% in 17, back down at 67%, and 18, and back up to 75 and then 78. And what you're going to see is going to occur is like in 2020, you'll see it looking like fifth number down in that first column, you're going to see an $860,000. They made some assumption changes in 2020. Now, I didn't take into effect the full amount because I own it. That's in your current MERS report. That's, I think it actually wasn't, Jody, around $1 million. Which will be reflected in your next year's audit. But the bottom line is you're underfunded and you're still trying to dig out of a hole. And if you look at the very next page, schedule of the contributions, it's basically, if you're looking across there, the first line is the actually determined contribution. This is telling you this is what you should put in per year by MERS. And then the second line is what did you actually put in? In some cases, you put in extra. You can see in 2020, you put 151,000 more than what you required, which brought you up to 1,158,000 that you contributed. If you look at back to 2012, your total employer contributions to the plan were at $602,000. You're at $1,158,000 in 2020, which is a $556,000 increase. Put in back then. Your 2022 projected contribution rate calculated by MERS, which I do know because I just report, is looking at you having a contribution of somewhere around 1,460,000, which is significantly higher than put in even voluntarily in 20. And when they calculate your payment or how much, and you have two parts to that. You have a normal cost, which is when they calculate what would it take to normally fund this to keep it going. Then you have what's called the amortized cost. Amortized cost, go to the next slide. Let's go back to page 15. To the graphs I was talking about that make it very colorful when you're looking through the MD&A section. These graphs came right out of the MERS actuarial report for 2020. Your normal cost projection for 2022 is $25,801 per month. The amortized cost, the makeup for what you're behind, is $96,253 per month. Almost 4 times what the normal cost is. And part of this is because you're paying for benefits that were earned 20 years ago. Sort of like Social Security, how you pay in today. Money's still, it used to be their savings. They're using our payments on today. And why did this happen? There's a whole lot of things that occurred, partly because I think these flawed assumptions for a lot of years. About 5 years ago when GASB 68 kicked in, hey, we got to change how you're doing things. The state stepped in, created a new department within the Department of Treasury that's for just local pensions, community development or something like that, but they deal with underfunded pensions, OPEB, and the likes. And when MERS was calculating your unfunded, they were using a 30-year amortization and never changing that denominator. So if I take a number and I divide it by 30 every year, I'm never going to get to 0. But the new rules say is start at 20 or 25 and every year off the bottom, which forces the highest portion up. So like right now you're at, I think at 19, next year 18 year amortization. Get rid of this. So it's going to force the up that you're behind on funded at a greater amount. What this graph does, the top graph, it demonstrates, if you look at the dark blue line, it demonstrates on that by 2039, you'll be fully funded. That's what your target is. Those dotted lines below that are representing if you did not hit the assumptions for rate of return for investments, because right now it's at 7.35. So this is giving you the alternatives. The interesting one is the graph that's right below that. If you look at the dark blue line, it's basically stating that by 2022, you're going to be funding at $1.5 million per year. And then you'll see around 2028, 29, it'll drop because at that point, they figure you're going to be at enough in there that you are going to be able to reduce your amortized portion and then level off again for a while. And then you can see the two graphs at about 2039, you're down to just paying the normal cost, which in your case would be somewhere around $300,000 a year. What does this tell me or tell you? It's telling you that you need to plan for a greater contribution. I'm guessing right now you're already halfway to that $1.5 million because the 2020 actuarial report tells you what your contribution is for 2022. So that comes out, 20 comes out in June of 2021 and tells you what you're going to contribute in 2022. And that's assuming that their assumptions are correct, because this is all based on guesswork. And this is based, that blue line is based on a return rate of 7.35%, which was for a lot of years, probably 20, 25 years, they kept it at 8%. A lot of us, and you're not long enough for me to harp about this, 8% was too high of a number. And they were using a 50-year look back and using averages that obviously I don't think should have been taken into consideration, because what happened 50 years ago in the stock market, today's world is totally different the way the stock market works. A lot of this money that's where it's at. So the 7.35, right? I'm not sure. Nice, but that's why the state forced them down from 7.7 or from 8 to 7.75, then 7.35. We've had 2 good years in the market, and I think that went to the idea of why they said, okay, if we're going to make an assumption change negative, let's take it now. And so I can't swear that that's what they did, but it just seems pretty coincidental that 2020 is when they changes. So again, that's based on current assumptions. Assumption is what it is, it's guess. Change effectively, but it does tell me, I think this really what it does is it paints a good picture for you for budgetary purposes. You expect that you're going to have to deal with that $1.5 million to $1.6 million contribution rate up until probably 2028. Budgetary issue. I think that 80% or better of the total expenditures of a county is in payroll. In old days, calculate cost of employee, you take whatever you pay them per year. Fringes, that's not the case anymore. Healthcare, other fringes like this, way over that.
It depends on which employees, because obviously we have the number of people who are in a defined benefit program are limited. We have the union contract positions excluding 911 that are included in that. And then we have those people who were left over, grandfathered in, allowed to continue in when the county board at the time made the decision to stop for general employees, for non-union employees. So everybody knew since 2012 has actually been defined contribution, but unfortunately, hindsight, 2020, that actually created a larger problem for us because we continue to amass retirees without people still putting into, it's a double-edged sword. But we do have, so the MERS report is actually on the work session for me to go over with you guys. So I guess next time's work session won't be any happier. So just throwing that out there. So.
Questions? I just thought we discussed putting this in the FDA because I thought this really painted by the board decisions they have to make dealing with this. And I having that where you can actually see it in black and white. Be nice if we could do the same thing with healthcare, but I suspect with report decision last week, you're going to see focus going back to the Affordable Care Act of something like that. So how that's going to affect premiums, time will tell. The last thing I was going to point out on the financials is if we go back to page 16, and this is your bird's eye view of the whole county. And this is in a full accrual. So this is sort of like looking at it from a business perspective because all the debts and all the assets are included in this. So if you look at page 16, that first column, it's all governmental activities. So governmental funds, like the general and the non, and the special revenue funds. And the second column is the business type activities, which we talked about a minute ago, with tax payment fund. Take that up. You got your total, and then off to the right you have the road. And I guess the thing I would point out is going way to the bottom, that position in the governmental, you're at $1. What that tells me is that even though you have these looming debts out there we talked about, you still have a positive number. I think last year you actually had negative, 145. So you've improved in that respect. The business activities, which is your tax payment fund and the airport, make the biggest numbers, 13 million. Obviously, you combine the two, they put you at 15 million net equity county-wide. That's taking buildings and everything, all the debts and the MERS and everything included. So, when I look at that, even though you have these issues like the MERS, you've got the ongoing issues of costs going up. County, relatively debt-free and pretty good standing. So you've got this MERS thing, but you're in with a group of a lot of other counties that are in the same boat. And being in the 70% higher, you're showing some improvement. So we're getting there, but I think you're just going to have the next 8-10 years, you're going to have to pull it to get through that until some of it really drops off. In the back of the audit, and I don't want to spend a bunch of time on this, the single audit's back here, and if anybody has any questions on it, they can ask me. There's a schedule in there, but specifically to the federal money, and then there's letters in here that are have to do with if there was any findings in that respect. And I guess the thing I'd point out is on page 102, which is the report on internal control and compliance. And this letter has always been in your audit because it's got to do with federal funds, regardless of whether you had a state audit. And in that letter, it states that we tested and looked at your controls on compliance and internal controls on how you do with your money and dealing with federal funds. And basically in there, it states that we did not find anything that we considered cause a material problem in your financials, or like a weakness that would allow something to slip through without Jody seeing it, or somebody, or Rebecca, without catching it. Okay. There is one comment in there that a weakness that's got to do with the fact that I prepare your financial statements as part of the audit, and by definition, that's considered a significant weakness. But I will tell you that every entity that I audit, I do the we'll probably could call any township and county in the state, and you'll find out the auditor did it. So what we did to offset that was put some safeguards in. One of the safeguards is Jody approve them before I issue them. Two, I have a third party or an outside CPA firm that reviews all of my Yellow Book audits. Does the same thing. I send them copies of the reports and my work. They review them and approve them. That's the safeguard you're going to find pretty much. I don't want you to read that and take that as a negative towards Jody or a negative towards. It's just not qualified to write an audit report, get all the proper disclosures in there. Most software in the world is going to do. You're going to pay somebody to do it. The only other thing is the very back of the audit, there in a loose letter, there is a management report. Basically states that, what my responsibilities are for the audit. It talks about any significant accounting policies. If I had any difficulties encountered in performing the audit, which it states in there I did not. I had any disagreements with management, I did not. Whether I knew of you shopping for opinions, in other words, you didn't like the way what I told you how to do something, and then call Dan Decker or somebody else and ask that question. As far as I know, you did not do that. There are some comments in here. One is I'm required to always point out your budget variances, and it went over, but when you look at the size of your county and what occurred, those variances that are listed under the comments or recommendations, are those normal and significant. Some of that actually was a result of my audit adjustments, as you didn't pay attention to your budget because you were in budget. Those adjustments. Trust and agency, this is a comment we've had in the prior, and I know I'll cringes when I bring it up, but she's working on getting that cleaned up, and it's really down to the bonds and forfeitures that she inherited when she took on her position. Just needs to be either paid back to the people that it belongs to we believe that some of this money is actually owed to the county. Whatever is known at that point would be disputed to the state. When we did the audit this year, we did some enhanced study and test work. We went to the sheriff's department and did the jail. Your jail collects a lot of money, bills a lot of money. So spent a good day over there asking a lot of questions, how they do things, documented, create some really cool looking flow charts, and made some recommendations. There was probably about 4 or 5 things that we picked out that we'd like them to see changed, and we're going to go back and check that. The only one that I would consider noteworthy, because I consider that this would potentially have a dollar effect on your that the jail does the billings for the inmates, sends them off to the feds or whoever. Money's collected at the treasurer's office. treasurer doesn't really know what they bill, and the billing people don't really know if it was collected. So we're just asking, get those two, create a report so that you know, Rebecca either knows what she should be expecting, or they can verify that what they bill got collected. That's a disconnect there. So I think that's being resolved, and I expect that back next year, actually all the comments will be taken care of. The only other thing, and I didn't actually write this in here, but we did have a conversation. You brought up the COA before we did have a conversation about that for the last 2 years. Regarding it, I didn't write it here. And just to give you some history, when that contract was written, it was based on the minimum of legal law. It wasn't based on thinking about the oversight that you have board contract. And so when you take in consideration things that Jody mentioned, like copy of the financial statement, important to have it in the past, that when that got written, it was just, we don't have a contract, we need to have one. They wrote the minimum that they need. Think about it, that's a contract that probably the single biggest contract that this county has dollar-wise, because $1.4 million of village money you're collecting, and you're paying on governmental entity to provide services. So 990, which is what annual audit, which they get every year. Budget, what they're about to do for the next year, that's going to be the important. You turned your buildings over to them a couple of years ago for mutual benefit. So how they're effectively planning on using those things. That's, so you might want to just make sure you think about it from that, not micromanage by any means. At least have the safeguards in there so this board you can step in or say something, or I think here's one sitting on it. I guess, you know, in closing, the county doesn't have any real debt, which is great. The budgeting process is working, evident in the variances. I would encourage you to continue using long-term budgeting, because by law you have to have a realistic standpoint to run a business like this. Multi-million-dollar one. You really need to have rolling budget 5 to 10 years. Talking about with the merger, you could throw in some inflationary factors and see, you know, fall somewhere down. Your continued concerns, as Jody said, it was in the you know, pension and OPEB. Your OPEB, I'm not too concerned about it, and what that is your post-employment benefits, what you pay for health insurance after you retire. The healthcare costs are going to be an issue. State, when they use their assumptions for OPEB, they said that healthcare, they wanted to use like is a 4.75% increase for next year, declining by 0.25%. Changes every year based on some sort of national averages, but that does give you something to at least work off. You could probably figure 5%. The jail is obviously a big number on your general fund as far as expenditures. There's a schedule in the now the total net that you cost of the jail after taking in the revenues went down, so is positive from what it was. Again, last year was a screwy year with COVID, because had costs incurred, not have incurred otherwise, and you had less prisoners. I'm not sure, because we did calculate your prisoner costs. It was significantly higher in 2020, but I It's because your cost of operations, your heads in there. Childcare fund is always an ongoing thing, which you probably cringe because I will say that Dawn and that crew has done a wonderful job trying to keep costs down, and it's very evident. You can see. Last thing would be got COVID money coming in this, or got it. And, there's going to be a lot of compliance that you're going to have to deal with between deadlines. I read Jody's summary that she well done executive summary. Thing is, there's some things that are going to be costs that you can put money into that aren't going to be specifically tied to proving COVID-related things. But Parish Township and Lyon Township have probably, I'm just speculating, but I would say their townships probably are going to put their money to sewer planning, which you can do, the way I read it, without having to prove COVID-related circumstances. There are some parts that they're talking you can spend money to that have to be proven as COVID caused. And so there's going to be, I consider it subjective work on how to be able to justify putting money in those areas. And so that's the ones that you're going to have to be very careful of. I laughed because last Tuesday they had a seminar online that a lot of clerks and treasurers from the state townships and counties listened to. And it was an hour and a half hour of it was them congratulating each other for the year. The other hour, they basically said, here's what's going on. They're going to give this money to the townships from the state, but the state's not going to oversee it. You're going to have to deal with the feds directly, just like the counties are getting their money from the feds. And that they didn't really know yet how this is going to work, and talk to your auditor or your attorney. I'm watching the same seminar you are. I don't know. So until this gets more black and white, I would just caution you about specific plans on where you're going to spend that money. I would definitely listen to your constituents, get a read on the county where the needs are. It is a grand opportunity. You've got 4.3 million. And there's probably some great needs that press. Again, just careful of the compliance, because next year when I come back, I really don't want to have any money in the wrong spot or properly spent. So just be careful in that respect. I'm always available if you need. So other than that, I'm open for questions if you get any.
Don't have Mr. Chair, don't have a question per se. I just appreciate that you coming in with, my big takeaway is what you said is we're debt free and good standing. You did. So we're debt free and good standing, and we're a fund balance of 16%. It's a big.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah. Exactly. I don't want to paint a negative picture. As an auditor, I tend to be very conservative, and it tends to be, I'll point out the negatives and not give you too many attaboys. You really do have a good thing going here. When I presented the audit yesterday in Oscoda, we talked about COVID and all the compliance issues. They said, well, who's responsible for that? And I said, the board. I said, you are, unless you appoint somebody. Well, who do we appoint? And I said, well, you got a clerk, you have a treasurer, or I don't know. And they said, what are they doing in Roscommon? I said, well, they got to control it. So you have great asset in having that controller, having Jody, first of all, but I can just having that position where you are able to somebody that's in charge of that money and your budgetary and your payroll and all that is all focused in one area. Clients, where if I deal with a township or a county, they're looking at each other going, Dave just found out he was as a supervisor because he's the chief financial officer. He didn't probably know that because they don't have that. So you've got a great asset and have that office and staff dedicated to positive, really positive thing.
Jim, will you introduce your helper? Because I don't think all of my commissioners met him, your new assistant.
Well, he was gone to Germany for 9 years. Got back here with actually my son, Jim Jr. Second year on your audit. For a while. Got more degrees than I do, so I'll bore you with that. Questions?
Bob, David, any questions?
I got just a few comments. I want to reiterate what Mr. Milburn talked about. Can you hear me out there? I know the audio is not real good if you're remote. I don't know about David, if he's having the same
Yeah,
problem.
I can hear you good.
Okay. Anyway, in going over that audit with that pre-audit with Jim and Jim, the child care fund is always going to be there. Like he noted, we don't have a lot of control over that, but I would be neglected without commenting on Dawn Lacaste is doing a wonderful job as far as taking that and having a county in mind when she's looking at things. And so I think they're scrutinizing that real good. The jail is an ongoing problem, but the sheriff, the undersheriff, and our lieutenant, Lori Beck, has done a wonderful job, I think, as far as controlling cost. They do question things before they do things, and I think Jim will agree that we are scrutinizing things in those two places, childcare and the jail. MERS is going to be an ongoing problem. You're correct. We're going to have to take a look at that because that's just going to get bigger and bigger. I do want to comment, and I passed this on to her personally, but Jody's done a wonderful job, and I'll tell you something. As far as administrator controller, kudos to her to bring us in at 16% fund balance. And as of December 31st, 2020, we look good, but our challenges are ahead of us, gentlemen. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Good report, Jim.
And to piggyback off what the chairman said, you know, not only do we have an outstanding county controller, we have an outstanding treasurer and exceptional department heads. And the end of the day, it really goes right down to the folks that work here in the building. We have exceptional people that work here every day. They're the ones that, you know, deservedly get the credit. I mean, the board may be responsible for the budget, but at the end of the day, it's the folks that work here that really should get the credit.
You do have every department we've gone into, well received and very cooperative. They felt a little raw by the time the end of the day. I think Abby was probably pretty. We're probably going to rotate around and hit some of the other departments and do some more detailed documentation like that. Out really well for us because it gave us some perspective that he probably learned a little bit. Probably continue doing is focus on hard on one and then based on the hotspots. We did that because two things: one, it hadn't been done in a long time, and second, significant amount of money. So it just made sense.
Okay, no further questions or comments. Thank you very much, Jim and Jim. Very good report, very good audit. It's always nice to meet with you. And with that, we will, at 20 after 10, we'll start our regular meeting. We'll take a break. Welcome to the Board of Commissioners regular meeting, June 23rd, 2021. Welcome, everyone, and I'd ask Mark to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Roll call the board members, please.
Russo,
Here.
Melvin,
Here.
Schneider,
Here,
Milburn,
Here.
Muckenthaler.
Here.
Very good. Approval of the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? We do a roll call on this. Roll call, please, Michelle.
Melvin,
Yes.
Schneider,
yes,
Russo,
Yes.
Muckenthaler,
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Motion carried.
That brings us to our first public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? Eric?
Turn this on?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Commissioners Milburn, Melvin, and Snyder again for their service in defending our country and our Constitution, which allows me to speak here today under the protection of the First Amendment. 2 weeks ago, I commented about Commissioner Snyder's and Controller Valentino's false statements regarding other counties having similar resolutions like the one that was passed by this commission on March 27, 2019. I hope this board is investigating those false statements and takes appropriate action soon. The taxpayers deserve answers to the questions I raised because we need to know if our public officials are dishonest or not. If mistakes were made, they must be corrected. In most cases, when a public official lies to the public, they resign or they are terminated. This commission has a real problem on its hands. A lot of people wonder what happened at the secret meeting with Eagle the day before the commissioners met on March 13th. Also, what did Controller Valentino say to the chairman before that meeting to prompt him to say, other counties have done this? Perhaps the chairman was just repeating what the controller told him. In any event, he should have checked it out. So we're faced with two possibilities. The chairman either intentionally lied or he became part of a cover-up to protect the controller. Either case is a big problem for this board. I emailed this board several times after that meeting regarding the chairman's and controller's untruthful comments. As we've come to learn, being part of a cover-up is worse than the original act. That also means that all of you are going to are part of the same cover-up, and that makes it a conspiracy. There's a growing cancer inside this board, and it needs to be cut up. This isn't going away. I'm not going to let it. A public meeting needs to be held regarding the untruthful comments instead of holding secret conversations amongst yourselves. It's clear the resolution was passed under false pretenses, and even worse, it is illegal and should be repealed. A resolution can't prevent you from doing your job. That's called dereliction of duty. Controller Valentino couldn't and wouldn't produce any variations from other counties in response to my FOIA request, as she had stated, but she did provide a link to a document she said the resolution was based on. The title of the document is Procedures for Stabilizing Inland Lake Levels under Part 307 Inland Lake Levels of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, 1994 PA 451 as amended. You need to look it over carefully. I brought a copy for you. It describes exactly what this board is supposed to do, which is nothing close to what your resolution provides. Page 1 talks about two ways to establish a legal level. Either 2/3 of the property owners can petition the court, or it can be done by a motion of the Board of Commissioners. The problem with your resolution is that the court has already established a legal level. We don't need 2/3 of the property owners or you folks to petition the court, and we don't need you to file a motion to modify the dam. We need you to enforce the legal level as already established. The powers to enforce the legal level are mentioned on the second page. It talks about the steps to be taken to maintain the normal height and level of the water in the lakes. In part, it states the county board, the drain commissioner, or other delegated authority on behalf of this county board must acquire the necessary permits and or approvals from the DEQ, as well as any other local, state, or federal permits as required to construct the necessary lake level control facilities. It also says the delegated authority must maintain the lake at the level or levels established by the order of the circuit court. You have done neither. Since the lake level is already established, the commission is compelled to ask Eagle for a modification to the LLCS, as it is undisputed that Higgins has not been maintained at the legal level. That's why you asked Spicer to give you recommendations about what should be done back in 2010. Passing bogus resolutions is a straw horse. All you need to do is ask the Eagle for a modification to the dam. You can do that at any time but for some reason, you're afraid to do that. This commission paid $30,000 for recommendations to the Spicer Group, and you have done nothing. You have the discretion to maintain the legal levels in any way you want. You can trailer in the water. You can drill wells to pump more water into Higgins. You can do any number of things, but you do not have the discretion to do nothing. That's why you're going to lose the current litigation. Your resolution has conflated establishing and maintaining the legal levels. It requires that 2/3 of the property owners petition the county to take steps to maintain the legal level. That's not the way it should happen. That's what's done to establish a legal level, not maintain it. You've turned the process on its head. The statutes require you to maintain the legal level, not pass bogus resolutions to prevent you from maintaining the legal levels. That makes your resolution a dereliction of duty. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Here for the record, thank you. And here's a copy of one of the documents.
Any other public comment at this time?
We understood it. The visitor portion, we could.
Okay, if you'd like to wait until then, that's just fine. Administrator Controller report.
Remember to turn my microphone on for this meeting. Currently, no changes in any of our legal litigation. Still a lot of paperwork going back and forth with no resolutions. We did have a meeting, Nick Johnson, our Director of Facilities and Maintenance. We did have a meeting yesterday with the group that was chosen for correcting the damage at the Houghton Lake level control structure. They were very impressive. Nick took them out to the structure, waders on in underwater. Very, very good group. So we'll have some information from them. They're looking for some historical. Michelle's going to check some of her records. What we're looking for is basically drawings from 1937 from we actually have ones for the timber structure in the early 30s, but not the dam that was put in. So we're searching for that information. I did attend a variation of different online courses this week and sessions. We did have the Northern Michigan Commissioners Association meeting, which Mr. Milburn was attending. I'm sure he'll mention later on. So I was able to attend that. I attended a session specific for administrator controllers in regards to the Veterans Administration's grant that they are offering through the state, and 2 different meetings on the ARP funds, which I'll be honest, nobody knows anything newer than they did before. So we're in that holding pattern that we've discussed several times as well. I did speak with the lawyer in regards to the Commission on Aging. Julie is on vacation, and I will tell you that I miss her desperately. She is very good at her job, and her absence is felt in the last 2 weeks for Noelle and I. And then obviously just reviewing the audit and our current budget for the month.
That seemed quick. Okay, moving on, item number 7, correspondence. We have a letter from Crawford County about 4-year terms for commissioners, I think it is. The American City government update, Central Michigan Health Department request for increased appropriations. We'll probably be having some discussions on that because it looks like it's going to be an increase for Roscommon County. And a letter from the supervisor from Richfield Township about Gypsy Moth spraying. Any questions on correspondence? Monthly department reports, we have none. That brings us down to the visitor portion. We're down to visitors, yes.
I'm Justin Malone, and I work for a company called Cherry Capital. At the beginning stages of starting a 6-year project in Roscommon. Face to face with the commissioners. We're also interested in RP money. Waiting on details of how that money can be allocated, but been being involved.
Your discussion. So it's, with our current projects, it's a 6-year program, bringing fiber to the home to approximately 1,100 households, 6-year townships. With additional funding, work on doing it faster, addressing 3,000 homes or so that are along the route, lower the cost of the consumer station. It's all about, capital. We fund it, and we do our timelines and our objectives based on the amount of funding. ARP is a great opportunity to use more capital with benefit for you, for your constituents, and helps us be more successful, deliver faster. Really like to be part of that continuum. Rules just came out soon by the Treasury for the broadband side that does encourage wireline. It's up for public comment and be finalized. Well, I'm really grateful that you haven't made a decision yet. Some have, for how much risk that was, but it's a patience to wait for the feds to define. Great opportunity for the county.
Duly noted. We'll keep you in the discussions.
In your email that you sent to Phil and Pat, my IT people, which will you make sure next time it comes either to one of the commissioners, the secretary, or the controller? Because if they wouldn't afford it, we wouldn't have known you were coming.
Okay.
So that would be, you mentioned a grant opportunity. I know it's in August that the deadline is. But honestly, if we had the ability to get some money through the grant process as well, I mean, we'll work overtime to do it.
Okay.
So
That's a very tight timeline. The good news is we've gone through a federal audit. We've done everything under the RDOF program that preps us for the grant. Fortunate, but it has to be in by August 17th. Then the money itself won't be allocated or awarded until November, but it's 288 million that's available for the whole United States. So it's a very competitive process. But I think the fact that we won RDOF does give us an edge in the sense that we are, from a point system, on the leading edge of that.
So who can contact me so we can work on that?
I will do that. I'll give you my card out.
Beautiful.
Do the control.
Yes, I
just
am.
hired my first contract. Great asset.
You'll like that. The other portion of that is, now, does any of this project, does it all go to creating new infrastructure, or is there any portions of this that can be used to increasing speeds? Because,
What we build is gig level services.
Okay.
So it's new infrastructure, speed wise, do a delivery that's up to 10 gig per location. So well for the future, not old technology trying to catch up. It's the leading edge. It's fast and it's reliable. Mostly is for the main line, but can also be used to go all the way to the connection to the home.
Okay.
Then on the other side, there is opportunities we can work with, which is to supplement the subscription on a monthly basis. A whole series of programs for contributing $50 a month towards a subscription on certain conditions. We are an eligible telephone company participating in Lifeline, so that those funds are all linked. We're able to go after those funds with the consumer.
And you guys are out of Traverse City?
Elk Rapids.
And Mr. Chair, I think the board could value more information. A recommendation to the gentleman would be to talk with the controller and the chairman and vice chairman after the meeting. And if so desired, they could recommend that you come in front of the board in 2 weeks for a presentation.
Thank you.
Again, that's a recommendation to the chairman and vice chair if they still feel inclined.
Happy.
We'd love every opportunity to be in front of anybody.
Very good. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Unfinished new business. First item A, American Rescue Plan funding. Sounds like we're still up in the air as to what we can do with what. We'll just keep it on the front burner.
Can I jump in here, Ken?
Sure can, Bob.
Okay. As far as the American Rescue Plan, we're still working on getting this committee around. There's a few more people we got to contact, so I'm not at liberty to really get into what we're looking at doing, but I think in 2 weeks we'll be ready. Because we need to really scrutinize this thing. And like you say, Ken, it's not real clear just exactly what we can use the money on, but it's getting a little bit clearer. But we need to get some people on board that maybe help us do a better understanding of that. So Jody and I have been talking, and Tim will be included in this, and we'll have something, in, I would say, in 2 weeks at the next meeting to really talk about this. Okay, that'd be my goal.
Okay. Item B, 911 Authority Board Committee appointments.
This is really Michelle and I, and she doesn't even know it. Surprise!
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking, I'm like, where's my sheet with the motions on it? And so I don't have that in my packet, so I apologize.
We don't have the motions. So where we currently stand with the the 911 Authority Board Committee appointments. We have one person specifically requested, actually technically two people specifically approved by the authority board that have been placed forward before the board. One of those is not in question. It is the township representative position, Rob Christian. We do not have it on for a current motion because I know that our clerk was working to make sure that we knew what term limits would be, what we were appointing for, who was what. So there is a portion of this that the Board of Commissioners does have to decide that we discussed last meeting. Our treasurer, Rebecca Reagan, has served for 12 years now on the authority board as an employee appointment. Obviously, an elected official is not an employee. There is a spot open currently for a member at large. Before this has been brought up, as we've been digging through some of the other things, and Michelle was trying to clean everything up for us, that was appointed to a individual through the 911 Authority Board. However, the Board of Commissioners, now has to make the determination whether or not you will be appointing Treasurer Reagan to that position on the 911 Authority Board as a member at large, or appointing the other candidate. So I'm not sure how you want to discuss this or how you want to proceed, but that's really the information we were looking for. And then the board would have to go out and find a member, not a member at large, an employee, to serve in that representation. So.
Is the at-large? Go ahead, David.
I apologize. I have a couple of employees that I would like to speak with, see if they're interested in sitting on the 911 Authority Board. I feel though they would, either one of them would be really good on that board. So I will get with the commissioners at our next meeting.
So we've got two positions that are open, correct? We're going to have two positions opening. Currently, she sits on one seat right now, but if we move her over to the person at public at large, that would open up the second seat for an elected, not elected, but a county employee. Okay. Thank you.
Right.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? Okay, moving along. Item number 11, motions and resolutions. Michelle, please.
Move to authorize the part-time quality assurance and improvement coordinator position for Roscommon County E911 position to be classified as a pay grade 5 per the Roscommon County pay grade system, $20.38 to $24.45 per hour.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by David and seconded by Tim. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Milburn,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Melvin,
Yes.
Muckenthaler,
Yes.
Russo.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Motion number 2, please, Michelle.
Move to approve the 2020 Roscommon County audit as presented by James M. Anderson, PC.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Moved by Mark and seconded by Tim to approve the 2020 audit. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Roll call, please, Michelle.
Russo,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Melvin,
Yes.
Muckenthaler,
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Committee reports. David, do you want to start?
Yeah, I really don't have much for this. I'll give a full report in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, I'm technically I'm out of the county. Be back next week. But I will have a meeting next week, Wednesday, with Central Michigan District Health Department, and I'll bring back more information in regards to that 3% increase on appropriation and what we can and can't do on that, okay? Thank you.
Okay. Mark?
NMCAA from Traverse City had the COA regular meeting and a special meeting yesterday. And we had the animal control shelter 2 weeks ago. And we had the NMCAA, as mentioned, the Northern Michigan Counties Association, the NMCA. And I'll tell you, listen to 2 hours of people talking about board rules and Robert's rules. It's a pleasure to work in this county because we don't have any of those kind of issues. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Tim?
10th, we've had animal control meeting. 2 weeks ago, I had the recycling committee and the solid waste committee. Last Wednesday on the 16th, I had the collaborative board meeting, which was a Zoom meeting. And that should be it.
Thank you. I had the preliminary audit report last Thursday, and then we had the agenda meeting. Also, on the 15th, I had LEPC. About the biggest thing there was we have a lot of PPE stockpiled. I believe it's over in the emergency management meeting room, taking up a lot of space. We're going to have to account for it, maybe distribute some more of it. And we have to submit critical infrastructure and key resource list to FEMA by February 22nd. So we're working on that. Also, the vaccination statewide average at the time of the meeting on the 15th was 55%, and Roscommon County was, I think it was 53% with 1 dose of the vaccine. So that's it for me. Now we have our last public comment. Any public comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Sorry. Mike's on, so we're all set to go. Again, I appreciate you allowing me to speak. I talked earlier about Chairman Schneider and the problem all of you had in dealing with this issue of making false statements. Controller Valentino has a bigger problem. She can be terminated. She's an employee of the county. At the very least, she should be disciplined and she should apologize to the taxpayers of Roscommon and this board for the misleading statements, and I call them lies, she made in support of the resolution. Then you need to repeal this resolution because it was based on the false narrative that lots of other counties have done this, and I actually have a couple of variations that they have done. Hopefully you'll have the courage to follow through, investigate, and report to the taxpayers about the deception. Something just as important is that this board needs to find out why these falsehoods were perpetrated on this board and the taxpayers of Roscommon in the first place, and tell us why this cover-up has been allowed to happen. It appears that a culture of corruption exists here inside Roscommon County Board of Commissioners. The facts that I've stated about what the commissioner and controller said has not been disputed by this board or the controller regarding the resolution, so it appears that you agree. In the March 13th, 2019 meeting, commissioners meeting, Chairman Snyder said, other counties have done this, and then Controller Valentino said, lots of other counties have done this, and I actually have a couple of variations that they have done. Not just, yes, other counties have done this, lots of other counties have done this, and she even had a couple of variations. Her statements were clear and concise and are not open for misinterpretation. Shortly thereafter, I asked her to produce copies of those variations through a FOIA request, and she couldn't produce them. She was obligated under FOIA law to produce the variations that other counties had. She did not. I hope this board is concerned about the deception. You're treading on thin ice. Your resolution needs to be repealed one way or the other. You can't make up your own laws. You have or you should abide by existing law. We haven't bothered to cover this issue in our current litigation, but it will be covered eventually. You have a chance to repeal it on your own for two reasons. One, you were lied to get it passed, and two, it has illegal provisions. Please get another legal opinion from a better attorney. I've received comments from several folks wondering what proof I have that the chairman and controller lied. I have the proof in the email responses to my FOIA request from Controller Valentino. She provided emails between herself and your prosecutor, Mary Beebe, who provided input for that resolution. Nowhere in those emails did the controller provide any variations from other counties. Instead, those emails are self-serving, cover the truth, cover your tail emails. Prosecutor Beebe is quite involved in the drafting of the resolution. I must say, you should get an opinion from a more qualified attorney, and Prosecutor Beebe should go back to law school and demand a refund for the education she received. This resolution she helped draft is illegal, and she should know better, and so should you. Additionally, the controller's email communications dated March 20, 2019 to Prosecutor Beebe, Jody Valentino stated, there are a few other counties who operate this way. Oakland County being my favorite model, as they have over 20 lake level control structures. Where did she learn that? Why would the controller write about such a thing about Oakland County? Oakland County have no such provisions. Did the controller tell everyone else on this board that Oakland County operated that way? Oakland County Senior Attorney John Bosch responded to my FOIA request about similar variations saying, and I quote, as I speculated during our previous conversation, the FOIA request you submitted to Oakland County has found its way to my desk. In response to your request, Oakland County does not have any rule, resolution, etc. regarding lake levels. Instead, Oakland County and the Water Resources Commission's office relies solely on state law. I trust this satisfies your FOIA inquiry. If it does not, please let me know. I sent this board a copy of that response back in 2019. It certainly doesn't sound like Oakland County operates with similar variations. Why would Controller Valentino email those comments to Prosecutor Beebe if she knew it wasn't true? Did she tell others on this board that Oakland County had the same resolution you were considering? And if she did, why? All of this is really disturbing, and it could be criminal. This is serious business. Conspiracy, deception, cover-ups, lying to public officials and the public, a culture of corruption and malfeasance. When public officials do such things, it is certainly something the commissioners should be concerned about, and it needs to be looked into and responded to, not ignored. By the way, I have all the documentations I've talked about earlier, including the email communications between the controller and your legal staff, if the press or any commissioner would like to see it. Thank you. And again, here's a copy of my comments.
Mr. Udi, you have the floor.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Commissioners. First of all, I'd like to speak. Did the gentleman leave already?
They did.
Oh, man.
They're just out in the hall.
Oh, okay, because as a supervisor at Dave Udy in Garris Township, I certainly want to talk to these gentlemen about
Yeah, I appreciate that.
expanding the footprint of broadband in our township, which is really critical to many things. First of all, when you think about homework, children's homework at school is pretty much done on the internet now. And if we have any families that have homes that are not connected to broadband, they either go to the library, they go to grandma's house or a friend's house, and it's very critical. Yeah, gentlemen, I'd like to speak to you after the meeting if we could. I'm glad you stayed. Second thing I wanted to comment about the meeting today, I was very impressed with the audit report, and I want to congratulate the auditor and the people that work here in the treasurer's office, the clerk's office. This is really a team effort, as it is in our township with our staff as well. Main reason I came here today is I wanted to give you a quick update as to where we are with our sewer project. The board authority is being sworn in this week. Our first meeting will be held next Monday morning at 9 a.m. at the Garris Township Hall. It is an open meeting. Public's invited to come. Our authority board members will be in place, and our engineering team will be joining the meeting either in person or via Zoom. Just one other thing, our first public hearing is likely to take place sometime in August, where the date is yet to be confirmed. Now that the governor has relaxed the open meeting standard, I believe we'll be able to move forward. So we're excited about that. So it's things are moving forward. We're very excited to be moving this project down the road. And I appreciate the time here this morning. Good to see you, Bob, and Commissioner Russo on video. So have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Rudy. Any other public comment?
My office is continuing to work with AuSable Township Clerk and Nestor Township Clerk in preparing for the upcoming August election. As I've mentioned before, they're both brand new clerks that have no experience at all with this process. So it's really great. They have a lot of questions. So Tammy and I have spent a lot of time, Tammy more than myself, answering those questions. So I always knew when I got her, she would be a valuable asset on that level. And so we're still working on that. And that is an election that will be reimbursed by the townships because they're having this in a special election year, or a special election because no regular election was scheduled. There is potential for a November election. I will keep you posted when I know that for sure. They'd asked me for an estimate on what it would cost, so I have to try to work with Missaukee County and guess how much that election would run them, or give them an estimate. We're still moving forward on our digitization project regarding the Register of Deeds records. All of the books have been scanned, so now they're in the review stage. They have provided us with the rough draft images of all of those, so we do have those on a hard drive. So they're working on the cleaning up and indexing part of that.
Thank you for inviting me down to witness that process. It was something to see.
Welcome. Thanks for coming down and checking it out. It was a lot. It took them a week. They had one person that did have to come back the following Monday. The rest of them had moved on to their next project, scanning project. And so we had one individual have to come back on Monday and spend a couple hours there. But this is a good thing. So if we ever get to the point where we've got, we have to shut the building down, those images are available for the public. I have been working with the legislative committee for the Michigan Association of Registers of Deeds because there's been 4 bills that were dropped into the House regarding, they're referred to as the Zillow bills. I don't know if you've heard of them. I'm sure Rebecca's probably heard a little bit about those, where Zillow is coming in and they're complaining because they don't want to pay the $1 per image fee to receive digitized images of all of our records. so that's just one of the bills. They're trying to work on legislation with registers of deeds, with treasurers. I think the one bill touches on equalization or assessors. And so doing a lot of work on that and maybe coming to you for that. I know MAC has opposed it as well because we did have a MAC summit meeting the other day. So I'll keep you in the know on that.
I know that we lost a few records in the flood in the basement. Some that were stored down there, some old records.
I don't know what records those would have been. That was
Are
prior to me,
these
so-
digitized records going to be stored like in 2 locations?
They are, currently there's already film for most of the books. What we did is we've gotten, and we had microfiche for the other. So, but yes, we are required to have film copies of all records. So even today, when somebody comes in and records an image, once we have enough images to create a roll of film, our vendor creates that roll of film, and then we have these rolls stored at underground storage in Grand Rapids area in a salt mine. So it's climate controlled, so we have them there. And US Imaging, they have, for all of the images that they're scanning for us, they keep a hard copy, a hard drive with those images as well. So yes, we do have them. And then any of our documents that we record through our current vendor through CoFile, they have a backup as well of those. So should something happen, like when Oscoda had the fire several years ago, you know, they have that vault. That's why it's so important to have a vault that is fire safe and water safe, and it protects those records. And her vault did protect her records. But if something should happen where they got destroyed by having these records digitized, we can bring those back. So my future hopes is at some point to be able to get all of our commissioner meeting books digitized as well, so that we have that backed up, that information secure for the future in case anything does happen.
Very good. Rebecca?
It was your cage and the controller's cage.
Years ago.
Very good. Any other public comment? Mark?
With your permission, Chair, I've been here a long time and I just want to kind of go on record. After 19 years as commissioner, I have always had the highest regard for this board and the public at large. And just like to say that I have the highest regard for Chairman Schneider, for Controller Valentino. These are unsolicited comments. I believe both of these exceptional employees, both, and the members of this board possess the highest and unquestionable integrity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, item 14.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you for attending today.